all rise.
Good morning, everyone. Hereby, I open this academic ceremony in which Lisi Guan will defend the academic thesis Enhancing Sustainable Supply Chains from Prioritization to Recovery. May I invite you, Lisi Guan, to present a summary of your findings and conclusions of your thesis, please.
Thank you. Dear Assessment Committee and colleagues, dear families and friends, thank you for joining my defense today. I'm happy to share with you the research I have been working on in the past few years. My research is about enhancing sustainable supply chains from prioritization to recovery. To start with, I would like to share two news from BBC. Recently, company Tesco was urged to help in reducing water contamination in river wine because its egg supplier caused water pollution. We can see a similar issue happening with another focal company, Nando, whose supplier was involved in an unsustainable practice, leading to ongoing arguments among. As above, sustainable issue in supply chain is neither the first time nor the only time addressed. In the supply chain, once an incident happened, the focal company is always facing serious challenges, such like damage to the reputation, loss of customers, or even public resistance. However, there are still some gaps for sustainable transformation in supply chains. On the one hand, the demand and the pressures for sustainability are growing rapidly. Customers, NGOs, and the governments worldwide are paying more and more attention to sustainable issues. At the same time, people expect that smart technology can speed up the transformation towards sustainability. Well, less and less tolerance today for companies when it comes to unsustainable scandals. On the other hand, limited resource for transformation. There are so many sustainable practices available, but the companies have limited resource. It's unclear for them what to do and what to do first. New technologies are available, but the stakeholders are lacking the knowledge to implement them effectively. Moreover, companies often only react after a problem happens instead of preventing in advance. All these gaps lead to one research question mark, that is, how to enhance sustainable supply chain from a holistic perspective view. This is one of my favorite pictures. Drawing style from left-hand side Rembrandt to right-hand side a masterpiece of my 3-year-old cousin. In the beginning, we have a very good idea of what a sustainable supply chain looks like. But during the transformation, different stakeholders may have different ideas, different priorities, or conflict motivations. with considering the system complexity, including environment, technology, and the supply chain network, tensions often arise. Sometimes, companies might even face sustainable failures in chain reliability. This shows how the sustainable transformation is easy to start, but difficult to output through the holistic process. Therefore, I set up 3 research questions to explore the insights above. First, investigate the reasons behind why companies easy to postpone. Research question 1, how do companies prioritize sustainable practices? Second, to understand the difficulties companies face when implementing sustainable innovation. Research question 2 is about how does the complexity of the supply chain system impact the implementation of new sustainable technologies. Finally, implementation is not the end of a holistic process, but recovery. Research question 3 examines how a firm recovers after an unsustainable supply chain scandal. Three studies are designed from a holistic view of sustainable transformation, including prioritization, implementation, to recovery. Step by step, zoom in from the strategic analysis at the company level to process analysis at project level until dynamic attribution analysis at customer level, which is individual. Research question 1. How does company prioritize sustainable practices? I identified and categorized 50 green supply chain practices in 8 types from all supply chain processes. Utilizing important and urgent metrics to analyze how green supply chain practices are triggered and motivated. The results show that urgency and importance are not always hand in hand. Especially urgency plays a crucial role in triggering green supply chain practices. 7 motivators are identified from 3 categories, which can impact urgency. They are regulation and certification, intrinsic awareness and extrinsic awareness, reputation, computation, and customization. The results also show that different market positions have different motivator sets. Research question 2, implementation. In this chapter, I identified 3 technology innovation paradoxes that companies are facing. The first paradox is about cooperation and experience paradox. During the introduction of a smart solution in a new project, suppliers need cooperation to achieve experience. However, customers often request suppliers already had experience before starting any cooperation, especially when dealing with complex supply chain system. This creates a loop which each side waits for the other, like a paradox of chicken and egg. Similarly, the second paradox is about regulation and practice. Regulatory approval needs reliable practices. For example, evidence of safety. But developing reliable practice beyond the test also requires regulatory approval, which creates a circular dependency. There's also self-referential loop. On top of those, there is a paradox between short-term and long-term demand. Suppliers need long-term to customize technology, but customers request quick return to invest, which cause tensions in supply chain transformation. By linking paradoxes with 3 levels of sustainable complexity from environment, technology, and supply chain network, this chapter also provides strategies of paradox management, including minimizing the complexity, reconciling the complexity, and balancing the nested impact from different complexity levels. To answer the final research question, how can a company recover after an unsustainable supply chain scandal? I designed a vignette experiment with 2 stages: post-incident and then post-recovery, to explore how different types of severity affect customer perceptions. Participants watch a video with 3 short vignettes. These vignettes are based on a fictional coffee company, and the participants are customers. For example, vignette about physical proximity showed how close or far an incident in supply chain was from the customers. Compare the differences from in our city or in South Africa. Similarly, participants also saw one of 2 possible scenarios from the other 2 factors: environmental impact and human health risk. Then, in the second stage, post-recovery, I tested apology, restitution, and monitoring, if they could impact the changes of customer forgiveness in return repurchase intentions. The results show that once an incident happened in supply chain, customers are often affected if the problem is about human health or is closer to them. But how much pollution there, whether it is high or low environmental impact, does not impact the customer forgiveness or repurchase intentions. I also found that response from focal companies can help in recovering the customer's forgiveness and in turn repurchase intention. Restitution by allocating funds to reduce pollution, or monitoring suppliers to avoid pollution in the future could help recover customer perceptions. However, apology only is not helpful. Moreover, negative interaction effects exist between the approaches. In another word, adding another approach does not adding extra value of recovery. 1 + 1 is not 2. To sum up, this thesis answered how to enhance sustainable supply chain transformation from prioritization, implementation, to recovery. It concluded the crucial role of urgency and motivation mechanism with market position. Identify the 3 paradoxes during implementations. Differentiate the severity impact and specified the recovery strategies. Drawing the 3 studies, this thesis also addressed some key insights for achieving sustainable supply chain transformation. First, process mindset. To enhance sustainable supply chain, it is necessary to see a failure as a holistic loss, while success requires all process achievements. Second, collective decision-making. By understanding the perspectives of multiple stakeholders and the interrelated processes, we might be able to develop a more complete understanding of how chain liability and the paradoxes can be managed during sustainable transformation. Third, smart synergy. In this thesis, both green and smart evolution are addressed in supply chain context. However, they do not always align. The tension between green and smart development still require further investigation to achieve synergistic development. That's all for my presentation. Thank you. Now I give the word to Prorector.
Dear candidate, thank you for your presentation. We start the opposition, and the opposition will be opened by the Chair of the Assessment Committee, Professor Dr. Bart Vos, Professor of Supply Chain Management of this House.
Thank you, Mr. Prorector. Dear candidate, dear Lisi, let me first start by complimenting you with the completion of your thesis. It looks very nice, the cover also, but also the content, very close to my own research heart, and it's also great to see that one of your studies has already been published and 2 are still in the pipeline. And on a more personal note, I couldn't resist. I also often enjoyed our conversations, and you refer in your preface, in your acknowledgements, to that fantastic conference in Berlin 3 years ago. But I have to correct you. It was not evil, Lisi.
Okay.
No, it was terror, Lisi. And now that may sound quite horrific, and it actually was very well meant. And that's why I have a second correction, because you say you're not that boring anymore. Well, you were not boring at all before that. So it's a small correction in the pre, but it was indeed a very pleasant conference. So those are enough nice words for now. Now I would like to go on to chapter 3. So I think we could have a debate about all chapters, and we probably will in the remainder of this defense. But in chapter 3, you puzzle me a little bit. So it's about the implementation, as you also mentioned in your presentation. But it's also it should be, if you look in your main research question, about the implementation of sustainable technologies. Now, I do fail to see that link in the context of chapter 3. So if you look, for example, at the research questions for that specific chapter on page 69, there is nothing about sustainability. And also, if you go to the unit of analysis, it's a robotic solution project, and that's very relevant in the last mile. In logistics supply chain, a very relevant topic. But you are not really convincing me that this has something directly to do with sustainability. So my first very straightforward question is, where is the link with sustainability? I'm looking forward to your answer. And I have some follow-up questions.
Dear highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and questions. First, I also have one small correction of this book because it is not one chapter accepted, but I also have the chapter 4, which is accepted by Journal of Supply Chain Management. I just got this news 2 days ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And yes, for the questions about chapter 3, implementation, it is based on the technology innovation, and we clearly put this chapter here is because the industry chapter with last mile delivery is closely related to sustainable. For example, the carbon emission in last mile delivery industry. So from the environmental aspect, this industry chapter have a high requirement of sustainable improvement. And the second is about the robotic solution we are implementing in this chapter. It provides efficiency improvement, not only for the environment, but also for the financial aspect. And the third is about the social aspect from the sustainable. Actually, this chapter starts with a call that we find the drivers in last mile delivery is not enough. And this is closely related to the social question.
But then the link with sustainability and the technology side, I see that the last mile delivery has a lot of potential sustainability issues, but what is the link? Because that's your claim. You're looking at the implementation of sustainable technology. Now, if you would go to your chapter 5, there you mentioned, for example, energy efficiency technology, and that is what I would call a good example where directly technology can have an impact on sustainability performance. And I sort of missed that in your chapter 3. So, and for example, if you would go to figure 3.2 on page 105, where is and there you have the complexities and the paradoxes, which I think is an interesting angle to study this. Where is the sustainability?
Yes, thank you for the question. Indeed, in this chapter, we address more on the implementation. This research question open and designed by the call of requesting according to the sustainable improvements. But then we come to, okay, what can we do for this? For example, the social problem with lacking drivers. Then they come up with, okay, might be a solution with a smart technology. However, how to implement this? Then we come up to this chapter that we focus more on implementation. It is indeed a part that in this chapter we do not address after the implementation, what will be the contribution before implement and after implement, the direct impact and shows off in the sustainable aspect. But this is also a function of this chapter here, that we are utilizing this chapter more to clarify the difficulties behind the implementation in this process. But maybe in the future, I could also use this idea as my next research paper.
Okay, that's a smart answer. For now, I'm satisfied, Mr. Rector.
The opposition will be continued by member of the assessment committee, Professor Dr. Stefan Söring, present online, Professor of Supply Chain Management from University Kassel.
Thank you. Dear candidate, thanks for the nice presentation of the core lines of your theory. And this is basically where I want to continue with my questions. If I look at the 3 chapters, then you explore supply chain practices, then you move basically into something very particular, which is robotic solutions in last mile delivery. And then you zoom out again into chain liability arguments. So how would you see that these 3 lines of papers, how do they fit together? Why do they make a thesis, and what is the contribution that you have beyond the single chapter?
Dear highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your question. The question is about how these 3 chapters are connected to each other based on the chain liability. Indeed, we find an aspect that is the 3 chapters are connected with the holistic process. From the first chapter, we clarified the prioritization process, which is how the companies are prioritizing and motivating for the sustainable practices. But then, after you have this motivation and the prioritization, then you need to do it. Then it's the implementation. So then we clarify what are the difficulties behind. And in the last chapter, we come to the idea about if the implementation is failed, or if there is an incident of the supply chain scandal, for example, what can we do to recover? So this is a storyline about how these three chapters connected. But I also want to address the chain liability, which is actually also an important term that in these three all chapters, because this is actually the core how and why different multi-stakeholders are cooperated together. In the first chapter, because of this chain liability, companies need to choose and prioritize their practices carefully according to different stakeholders. How do they motivate it? Different stakeholders have different conflict motivations. And in the chapter 2, it is an implementation in a project among the cooperators. We have suppliers, customers, we also have the third parties. So this chain liability shares the responsibility, but also provide difficulties for them to implement all things together. That's how it comes to sometimes difficulty to implement. And the last question, I do not need to address more. It is because of chain liability, so that the focal company has to pay off for the supplier's fault. So this is how the storyline behind.
First and the last chapter, yeah, but particularly the very much implementation oriented one on the last mile delivery, how would you really connect this one to chain liability effects? Because chain liability effects we typically discussed into like what do I do with second tier suppliers, with third tier suppliers? How do I manage all of these kind of things? Do I manage directly? Do I manage indirectly? All of these kind of things. But how would really the second main chapter 3, fall into this chain liability logic?
Yes, thank you for your question. To explain this, I would like to address a bit the analysis unit in this chapter 3. So the analysis unit is a project in this chapter. And for each case we provide have both supplier and also the customer and the third party like a research technology provider. So this supply chain in the technology exist is the target of each case in this study. However, during the implementation of this new technology, tensions from the supplier and the customer and the service or the technology suppliers. So these are the chain liability in this context and the responsibility beyond each candidate. This is the logic behind.
Many thanks. I think we move on with the next person in the sequence.
Thank you, Professor Sorin. The opposition will be continued with member of the assessment committee, Dr. Wim Lambrechts, Associate Professor of Sustainability of Open University. Wim, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Prorector. Dear candidate, let me first start with congratulating you with the work delivered and the 2 publications already accomplished. I truly enjoyed reading your work, and of course I also have some questions. I would like to start by asking one of your paronyms to read your proposition number 1.
Sustainable transformation is particularly unique within the context of supply chain due to the concept of chain liability.
Thank you. And this is, of course, also connected with what has previously been discussed regarding the chain liability. But I would like to set focus on the conceptualization of sustainable supply chain management, which is connected to what you describe as sustainable transformation in supply chain context. And in your introduction, you refer to the diversity of concepts surrounding sustainable supply chains, which can be a bit overwhelming when you dive into that field of research. While reading your work, I was wondering which conceptualization that you would position your PhD, and by extension you as a researcher yourself, in this field. And I give an example. In the introduction, you refer to sustainable supply chain management, while in chapter 2, you use green supply chain management. So I'm wondering why this shift in focus, and would the choice of this conceptualization influence how you present the outcomes of your studies?
Dear highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and the question. For the question, how do I position my research in the field of research? I would like to address my research is based on supply chain management research and focusing on sustainable transformation. And it is interesting that how we start this research design, because the sustainable is a big issue. It includes 3 bottom line with environment, society, and also financial-wise. So to include all the atoms in and from the traditional way, it's already over-talked. So we are thinking what is the current society request from the society, from the sustainability. Then we come up with the most important part from my point of view is still the environment. That is a reason why the first chapter, actually chapter 2, the first paper, is focusing on the environment. Because sustainable at the end is still, we can enable the current generation to satisfy our need and also in the future. So that's why the first chapter, I prioritized the most important aspect of sustainable, which is the environment aspect. However, the sustainable from the traditional aspect is already been talked for years, but currently the technology raises up rapidly. And we see that the sustainable is not only the traditional way, how we see it, but also need to follow up the speed of the changes of the age. And we see the demand of new technology, especially the innovation conversation, need to be discussed under the sustainable issue. So that's why we add the second chapter and specify addressing the technology innovations. And last but not least is the recovery. It is easy to think about sustainable, but difficult to implement, just like the proposition, because it is so unique in the supply chain to talk about sustainability. The responsibility is not I only do the things right on my hand, but also I need to be careful the things are not going wrong from the upstream or even suppliers. So this makes the context more unique, but more uncertain. So that's why the third chapter, we are addressing more from the perspective of recovery. We cannot 100% prevent, even though we are going for that, we are aiming for that. But once an incident happened, in sustainable, what can we do? So this is how we come up with these 3 topics in sustainable scope. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have a follow-up question. And if you refer to the triple bottom line and these 3 dimensions of sustainability, how, in a supply chain context, then, how can you deal with these tensions between these different dimensions and maybe also the trade-offs that are being made when prioritizing the practices?
Exactly. Yeah. The balancing is a very important topic to address. Actually, in the first 2 chapters, we are utilizing this idea of balancing. In the first chapter, we see the balance in the company, that when the company prioritizing the practices, they are choosing what to do and what to do first. They are balancing through the importance and the urgency, but they are balancing based on their motivator sets. With different market position, they are balancing in different way. For example, the high reputation company, they are care more about their reputation. They have strong market position. So their urgency is more from the customer aspect, not losing the customers. This could easily trigger their urgency. So when the balancing comes to their position, this is the priority. But for some companies with a weak market position, and they are easily triggered the urgency by the regulations, the government have a bottom line for them. So when they are balancing, they are trying to survive. So this is a different aspect from different position in this balancing. And in the second chapter, actually, is also have this balancing concept. For example, we have identified 3 paradoxes during the implementation. But we know that these paradoxes are based with different complexity. So in managing the paradox, we also need to balance how do we deal with the nested impact from different complexity. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to give the floor to member of the assessment committee, Professor Dr. Alassane Ndiaye, Professor of Transport and Logistics from Université Libre de Bruxelles.
Thank you, Mr. Prorector. Thanks. Let me start congratulating you for your research and publications also as well. And thanks for taking us through this transformation journey, supply chain transformation journey. It's a pleasure listening to you. So, dear candidate, your work, it touches a point which is somehow critical, linked to what we can call the measurement of sustainability. And this touches a critical part of my research areas, which is the quantitative modeling of operations performance, of supply chain performance. So let's take a kind of a helicopter view to have a, if I can say, a kind of a backward look. You're using tools, metrics, an arsenal also of indicators. So the question is, are they still appropriate to measure sustainability in the way that we understand or we will understand sustainability? Is this arsenal of tools, metrics, and approaches still appropriate? Do we need to revise them or to revise part of them? Can technology help? So would you please discuss that point, which is basically related to how the measurement tools that you use to measure the sustainability outcomes may also need to be questioned, some of them, or to be changed, to be revised. Thank you.
Dear highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and question. Your question I can split into 2. That is, first is, how the measurements, for example, the importance and the urgency metrics provide insights of sustainable and how to improve it from technology help. First, I would like to address a little bit for the measurement we use in this importance and urgency metrics. This metrics is not for the performance of the sustainable suppliers. This metrics is a measurement for how do they prioritize. So we do have classified their sustainable performance in each green supply chain practices into positive and non-positive categorized. But the measurement of important and urgent metrics is to clarify how do they prioritize what is important and what is urgent for them in the prioritization process. But this question is also interesting and gave me fresh because I am now already currently working in industry, and I just finished EcoVadis evaluation for sustainability with procurement size. And so I can see that indeed, for the measurement importance and urgency from the prioritization, we answered how the company are prioritizing the practices. But to measure their performance and the KPIs, currently EcoVadis, for example, this is one of the most popular measurements for the sustainable practices in industry. It divided into 4 categories, and sustainable procurement, environmental impact are very important categories in this EcoVadis measurement. But I do also see some, improvement space in this EcoVadis if I can give them suggestions. That is the short-term and the long-term aspect. Because for now, the EcoVadis measurement for sustainable performance is every year. So every year you have a chance to review your performance in sustainability in different sections. But I think it might be also an important aspect to clarify what is your short-term strategy and what is your long-term strategy. Because sometimes if we are focusing on too much one-year improvement, then we might lose the long picture, and the sustainable issue is exactly a long-term request topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answer. Follow-up question, maybe? A short one, very short. Sustainability is also a dimension somehow of performance taken generally. So do you agree onto the fact that there is a kind of a trend, and that trend probably will last for the years to come, to understand under sustainability, resilience, adaptation, and mitigation? Do you see something else to be added to cover up what we can understand under sustainability? Thank you.
That's a very deep question and a very creative way that I indeed didn't think about. But I can give my opinion for the sustainable trend. I have heard or I have been asked questions, Lisi, do you believe sustainability? Do you believe sustainable? Do you believe our society, our continent will go for a sustainable way? I told them, to be honest, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there will be sustainable forever, the plant will run forever, we will be immortal. But if we do not go for sustainable or we do not work on that, I am sure it will go worse. So in this aspect, I would address the intrinsic awareness, which I also addressed in one of my chapters, that in sustainability, I think everyone's intrinsic awareness of this could help in contributing this sustainable trend.
Dear candidate, thank you for your answers.
Thank you.
Thank you. The opposition is continued by the member of the assessment committee, Dr. Peiran Zhao, associate professor in finance of this house. That's not.
Okay. Thank you, dear rector, and dear candidate. I first want to join my colleagues in congratulating you on this fantastic thesis and on your successes. I'm really happy for you. And I really enjoyed reading the thesis, and I also personally learned a lot from it. And given my background in finance, I would like to ask you a question that's at the intersection between finance and the topic of your thesis. As you probably also know, that corporate social responsibility and sustainability have also been an increasingly important issue in finance. But there are some conventional economists and financial economists that hold different views. And the most famous of them is the Nobel Prize laureate, Milton Friedman. And he once famously stated, and I quote, that there is one and only one social responsibility of business: to use its resources and engage in activities designed to increase its profits so long as it stays within the rules of the game, which is to say, engages in open and free competition without deception and fraud. So this is highlighting that at the core, what the firms should do is only to maximize profits. So recently there's a big debate about whether companies should take into account of social responsibility and sustainability. Especially at some points, they conflict with their goal of profit maximization. So after reading your thesis, because you're trying to address sustainable supply chain management through prioritization, implementation, and recovery after scandals, so what I'm missing from reading the thesis is a discussion of how these overlap or interact with the profit maximization goal of firms. So my question is more in general about the thesis. How would your results in the thesis relate to profit maximization of companies? And maybe to give an example, let's say in chapter 2, you addressed the issue of prioritization in improving supply chain management sustainability of firms. But when the firms are making such decisions, are they still at the core considering profit maximization? If so, what is the novelty and implication of your findings? And if not, if they're not at the core doing profit maximization, then what is new in your finding that may contradict or complement profit maximization? I would like to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Dear highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your question. To clarify before I answer, your question is about the financial aspect, how it is presented in my chapter, and how do I see the contribution from my research to the current existing understanding of company prioritization. This is an interesting aspect I would like to address from the first chapter that we utilizing the prioritization, and we did also get some reviewers' feedback. For example, they said company may easily go for the low-hanging fruit. And is this always the case that they prioritize in this important and urgency, or they just go for this trick? And then my answer is, indeed, there are some low-hanging fruits, but they are still practices. So these practices can hardly be categorize this as a financial aimed practice or sustainable aimed practices. So we categorize all these practices unknown, but see how do we prioritize. And I do see that there is not a conflict results from my research and the previous research. It's because we are focusing on the resource allocation. At the end of the day, it is still an efficiency discussion, no matter how the financial issues or the sustainable issues. Companies need to survive from a short term. They considering about the financial, but they also need to survive in the long term that have request from the customer aspect. And even recently, the customers are raising up more and more sustainable requests, which can actually directly impact their market position or losing customers. This is directly linked to their financial performance. So that is how, in my opinion, that there is no conflicts.
So maybe to allow, and I don't know if it's possible to have a very quick and more concrete follow-up. So let's say if a practice for improving supply chain management sustainability for a firm that does not immediately increase the firm's profit, or maybe even damaging the firm's current period or current profit, then how would the firm deal with this trade-off? Should it go for, let's say, improving sustainability and contributing to the overall well-being of mankind, or it should still stick to its profit maximization?
Thank you for your question. If I stand here like 1 year ago, maybe it's hard to answer this question. But just as I mentioned last year, we have this EcoVadis in the company Alangsu, which I'm working for. I can tell you that the sustainable improvements, the feedback doesn't need 10 years for return. With 1 year, addressing and clarifying what we are doing in the sustainable way and with policy improvement, we already have a big improvement from the scorecard, for example, the EcoVadis. And this provide our confirm of the industry how we are doing good in the sustainable. And this will also provide evidence to the customers about our sustainable. So it won't be too long to wait. Thank you.
Thank you.
The opposition is continued by member of the assessment committee, Dr. Judith Behrens, associate professor of entrepreneurship from ULB.
Dear Prorektor, thank you very much for the introduction. Dear candidate, dear Lisi, it was always a pleasure seeing you within the last year growing. I joined several presentations at ULB. Congratulations on all your achievements. I'm really happy for you that you already published and that you worked so hard on your thesis. And already many questions were answered, and it's going a little bit in the direction that the former assessor asked you. So you told us that you now work in industry, and I was wondering, what could you have learned from your thesis that is relevant now for your job in your industry, within your industry experience? And as I'm also an entrepreneurship professor, I was always wondering, what could younger ventures learn from this? Would you say that all the models that you introduced and discussed in the former question could also be related to startups? Or would you assume that there are differences?
Dear highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your question. Indeed, it really brings me a lot of experience from the industry and helping me better understand my research and my results. it is also an opportunity that for me to rethink about how my research can be utilized in the industry to improve. From the last year experience, I find out that there are two important points. One, the company comes to sustainable improvement or sustainable transformation. One is the current situation. Sometimes it is hard for them to clarify and to understand what they are doing. Like my chapter 2 also addressed, there are thousands of green supply chain practices, what to do and what to do first. And indeed, in the industry, in my work experience, we see that there are really a lot of practices that can contribute, but some are also can contribute. We need to put more efforts in. So then we come to a balance that to choose and to prioritize what do we need to do. And this is very important. Actually, some of the firms already did some sustainable practices, but they do not know that they are doing. And they do not know they are doing is not only a missing information of the sustainable, but it is also they do not know what to do is correct, then they can continue. So they are hardly to differentiate. So this is one point that I would suggest for the industry or the companies, it is important to clarify what they are doing and what is to do. The second is the improvement of the policy. According to the experience, we find that the policy plays a very important role in the development of sustainable. It is the leader of the whole structure that can keep the whole company improve as a structure instead of just some small points and practices. And from your entrepreneurship aspect questions, I would address interesting results from my chapter 2. That is, we find that from the small companies, which is weak market position companies, the entrepreneurship, the awareness of the managers in the sustainable issues are effectively triggering the urgency of green supply chain practices. So based on this, I would suggest to the companies, especially when they are positioning in weak market position, to improve the sustainable with HR, with recruitment. It is important to address and pay attention to the entrepreneurship of sustainable to have the whole improvement. That is my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your answers.
If you follow, I would appreciate. So it's really kind of time not to open the second round. I would appreciate if you just ask your next question.
So I can go for another one. I wasn't sure. I wanted to double check first with you. Okay, then I still we have time for a second question, if I understood correctly. So let's assume you wouldn't go to industry if you have made your decision to stay in academia. And now you become a professor and you have your own PhD students. What would you supervise them to do? And that is maybe coming the direction. Usually in entrepreneurship, you have this learning from failures, things that are not really working well. So what would you advise? Please don't do this, and this would be your steps. Is there anything that you would advise the PhD when they get started?
Thank you, Judith. So it's a little bit awkward, so we have really 1 second missing. If you can address the question in a very short manner, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry for the time limit. I will address this in one sentence. Advice for PhD students go to industry or stay academic is follow your heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear candidate, dear Lisi Guan, the time appointed for your defense of your thesis has passed. The degree committee will withdraw now to discuss the quality of your thesis and the quality of this very defense. I request you and your company to stay in this room and to wait for our return. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The PhD defense has now ended. The degree committee will debate the candidate's performance behind closed doors. This process usually takes about 10 minutes.
Long road to the south side. 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the line, I know you know that I can't read your mind. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. On the dash, got my laces tied. Long road, I don't waste no time. Break rules because fate decides. With the team and we chase the light. I make a move, fall down, shake it off. I hate to lose, bad branch, break it off. No room for negativity, praise and love. Prepare for deep part cause we're taking off. Take the mileage, traveling so far from home. Gathering knowledge, other connections. I put the time in to get everything I ever hoped for. It's a challenge and we all in. It's a better future that we go for. And even though these nights seem long, I know that I am never on my own. Know you've won the battle once you've grown. South side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Long road to the south side, 10 miles in my rearview mirror, I know what it felt like. My goals only getting clearer, east side to the west side. No place like home, if it's questions that you've got, go the extra mile and die. Years can't fly by now, don't waste all your time. Cause I'll go the extra mile.
Dear Lisi Guan, the degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and the quality of your defense. In view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Dr. Lieven Quintens, your supervisor, is authorized to confer upon you the academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. I invite your supervisor to now to take the floor.
Please all rise.
Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent and responsible?
Yes, I promise.
By the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee hereby present, I hereby confer upon you, Lisi Guan, the degree of doctor and grant you all the rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary and the other members of the committee and affixed with the official seal of the university.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Dear Lisi, dear Dr. Lisi Guan, first of all, congratulations, you did it. It's really done. So relax, you have reached the finish line. It's a real honor for me to stand here today, not only as one of your co-supervisors, but also as someone who has the privilege of witnessing your journey, both professionally and personally. Today we are here to celebrate Lisi, an ambitious, curious and determined young woman who crossed continents to pursue her goal. From China to Maastricht, bringing with her an open mind, a strong motivation and a clear ambition to take a difference. When you arrived at Maastricht University back in 2018, it was clear you weren't just any PhD student. You had a clear mission. You were determined to help make supply chains more sustainable. If there was a way to make logistics greener, you were going to figure that out. And then, not long after, you made it even more challenging, because why not? In 2019, you decided to go for a double degree PhD. That meant fulfilling the requirements not only here at Maastricht, but also at Université Libre de Bruxelles. Double the work, but also double the achievement. And very fittingly, a double international achievement, a PhD from the Netherlands and one from Belgium. Your research on green supply chain transformation has already made a strong contribution. You have published in respected journals like the Journal of Supply Chain Management. And I know there's more to come. But as many people know in this room, a PhD is never a straight line. It's always a winding road. And doing one during a global crisis, that's even more a challenge. There were great moments, your presentations at conferences in Euroma, the Times Square Research Center in Brussels, but also tough moments. About a year ago, you really hit a low point. You were juggling your PhD with a demanding job in logistics, in practice. And you started to doubt whether you would make it to the end. But what really struck me during that time is how you handled it, with honesty, with courage, and eventually with a renewed optimism that brought you here today. Of course, no one completes a journey like this alone. Lisi, you had the support of amazing friends and family, many of whom are here today. And we're especially honored to welcome your parents, who made the long trip from China to be part of this beautiful moment. Now, many of us remember when Lisi once decided that she was going to move back to China for good. But that lasted about 10 days. And I think we all know why. Let's just say someone in the Netherlands made sure that she had more than academic reasons to return. Love, after all, has its own logistics. Beyond her research, Lisi is just a joy to have around. Warm, energetic, and full of enthusiasm. I always looked forward to our weekly meetings with the three of us, Lisi, Dr. Lieven-Quintens, and myself. Though I have to say, sometimes your sentences were as complex as the supply chains that you were analyzing. Instead of simply saying the complexity of the supply chain requires immediate action, you would say something like, the necessity for the implementation of supply chain complexity mitigation strategies mandates the initiation of immediate intervention measures. Streamlining your writing became a bit of a project in itself. But we got there one simplification at a time. I would also like to take a moment to thank everyone who supported you, especially during the pandemic. To Dr. Lieven-Quintens, thank you for inviting me as co-supervisor and for all the nice collaborations. To some of your co-authors on one of the papers, Adriana Saracini and Dr. Tim Hilken, for the great collaboration. And of course, to the assessment committee, thank you for the evaluations, for joining us today, here in person and online. So, Lisi, your journey has been international, emotional, and truly inspirational. You have shown resilience, intelligence, and above all, a generous and open spirit. Congratulations, Dr. Lisi Guan.
Thank you, Evelyn. Dear Dr. Guan, also on behalf of Maastricht University, my sincere congratulations with the doctoral degree, well deserved. Thank you very much. And with this, I would like to close this academic ceremony. A short announcement on the complex contemporary logistics. So the ceremony is over now. The committee and paronyms, and of course Lisi, Dr. Guan, will remain in this room, so also parents and partners might stay. We make a couple of pictures, we chat with people present online, we make a little bit of